All right, guys, so I wanted to make a video on this for a while, and I was going to try a live stream, but my live stream just ain't working right the way I wanted. I reset my live stream, a couple of settings, but I'm going to have to wait to test that out. I don't want to do it on this video. So what I've been wanting to talk about, and it's been on my mind a lot lately, is how to stop mass shootings, especially when we're discussing and talking about schools. And I have a lot of ideas. Some ideas you may have heard before. Some maybe you have not. Maybe some is just some details on some things that we could talk about. Now, first of all, this is never about the gun. For some reason, this started happening back in the 90s. And every once in a while now, not as much as this liberal media would try to make you think, you still have more chances of getting struck by lightning while winning the lottery than you do of being shot inside of a school building. But anyway, any teenager that dies is too much. So I don't want to brush that off, even though the numbers are what the numbers are. I don't want to just downplay anyone that's died. I would never do that. First of all, let me bring it to you in different terms and let you look at it in a different way. We had one hijacking on 9/11. Well, I mean, there was different planes that were hijacked all at the same time, but we had a major hijacking happen in several planes on 9/11. After that, it's never happened again in the United States. Why is that? How come some big catastrophe happens like that and it never happened again? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because the airline industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. They would never let anything get in the way of their profits. Now, don't get me wrong. People need to fly. People fly for a living. And I'm not taking anything away from that. But never would they want anything to get in the way of their business and their money and everything else. And I don't blame them. They shouldn't. So what do? They put measures in place. And they changed things around. They changed the way they did things. Now, what did schools do after the 90s into the 2000s? Absolutely nothing. They did nothing. These schools are still sitting the same way they were pre-Parkland. 90% of these schools, they've done nothing. The school business is not a for-profit business, okay? School is paid for by the government. So there's no profit to be made there. Otherwise, things would have changed years ago. I have no doubt about that. But that's why that there wasn't big steps taken, because it's not for profit. Whoever thought it was a good idea to have school buildings full of kids that was not secure? Whoever thought of that in the first place? I'm sure a lot of schools do lock their doors now, but it wasn't long ago where school buildings didn't even lock their doors. Anyone could just wander right in. So I've got some ideas. Number one, I just kind of wanted to lay the foundation of how this could have been stopped and hadn't. And my proof is that we've had no hijackings in the United States since 9/11. And that's because they changed the way they did things. And they kept their business going, and they wanted to keep making their profits, and they did. And it worked. So, school is not for profit, so that's why we don't see that happen, I believe. Okay, so what are some of my ideas? First and foremost, now, I don't have everything down to, the most minute detail. You can put some comments in below. First and foremost would be only one main entrance to get into the school. We'll talk about fire exits. We'll talk about that. So you got one main entrance to get into the school. At that entrance, you have a metal detector. I've got some ideas about that. Okay, I'm going to blow your mind with this. No, but I do have some ideas about that. People's biggest complaint or fear is they say, I don't want my kids to go to school in something that looks like a prison camp or some kind of entering some kind of a police station or something. Well, here's my idea. Now, a lot of you probably don't know, some of you may not know, some of you may, how metal detectors work and the different kinds of models you can get. So metal detectors aren't always like you see in the movies, where it makes an alarm when you go through. They use a lot of metal detectors now that have lights. The lights are green. Then it goes in a series of green, several LEDs of green, several LEDs of yellow, several LEDs of red. You go through with a belt buckle, you go through with the zippers on coats, it'll kind of blink up a little bit, stick and go down. Somebody walks through with a handgun, it goes up to red, as high as it can go, and it sticks on red for about 3 seconds and then slowly drops back down. So you can always tell when somebody has something that's either a big metal object or what you would think would be a gun, and that's when you'd have to check them. So it wouldn't always be this little beeping every time somebody walks through the metal detector like you see on movies. It wouldn't be like that. You have somebody, you have a security that's thoroughly vetted at this where the metal detector is. I've got some more ideas about the metal detector, just hang with me. But you have security where the metal detector is. Somebody that's trained, vetted, maybe an ex-veteran, or a veteran, maybe a veteran is manning that. And he's more, on a day-to-day routine, he's more of like a greeter. Kids are coming in, he's saying, hey, how you doing? And, talking to them. His second job is to also watch out for bullying in the hallways. Anytime he sees bullying, he would write this down, chart it down, mark the time, who it was, or a description, and he would give this to one of the counselors or the principal or somebody higher up in the school. He wouldn't himself, now unless there was actual physical contact where he needed to intervene, he wouldn't necessarily have to do anything about this, like if it was name calling and different things, but he could pass along the info and help with the bullying aspect too. Now, as far as the metal detector itself, and people say, well, we don't want it to look like a prison or a police station, what you would do is, and I know there's companies that would do this, is the metal detector would be right in flow with the door frame, and then anything that would be exposed would be wrapped in the school football team mascot and colors. So anything that was exposed on the metal detector, except for the lights, and if they had the alarm on there, whatever, but everything else would have a wrap on it, which would be the school mascot. And so let's say you're the Bulldogs or whatever. It would have your school logo, your colors and everything, and it wouldn't look like a jail or entering a police station, or something like that. It wouldn't look so hardened. And then as for the most part, the veteran or whoever is there manning it would be kind of like a greeter to the children as they come in. Okay, now as far as fire exits, this would be the only entrance. There would be several other exits, and these exits would have an audible alarm that would ring alarms in the school to the heads, and maybe also even be connected to the police department. So and there would be severe punishment if anybody ever opened that door and let somebody in. Both the person that opened the door and the person that came in the fire exit would get, on a first time basis, would get suspensions and whatever else they could do. The punishment would have to be heavy for that. So you would never have somebody coming in an unauthorized door and only have one entrance. That's some of my ideas right there that I think would really help things in school, because trust me, if there was a school building or if school buildings were for profit, it wouldn't be like it is right now. You would see things run much differently. But what do? They do nothing. They blame the guns. This David Hogg kid, this kid's just anti-gun. He doesn't think that what he's proposing is going to stop anything. He's just anti-gun. What happens is also, I think what should happen is any teacher that has a carry concealed permit or would like to have training would also be allowed to carry in the school. You're not forcing anybody. You're not mandating it. You're not just going in and arming teachers and saying, here, pass them out. But what you're doing is you're saying, hey, this science teacher that has a carry conceal permit, shoots with his wife and his family on the weekends and has fun at the range. Why would we bar this guy from carrying in the school when he carries everywhere else he goes to protect himself and his family? And, you know, he goes into restaurants where there's kids around. He goes to the, you know, wherever the park where there's kids around, and he carries there. Why disarm this man when it comes to school? Gun-free zones don't work. That sign means nothing. So that's another thing you would do. And a big rule of that would be nobody can know who the armed teachers are. Even the teachers shouldn't be able to tell the other teachers unless there was a special exception to that rule for some reason. Nobody would know who has it. It would be covered, concealed, just like a man that has a carry conceal permit carries every day. That's the way a teacher would be. You know, it's not some big burden, some big responsibility like all these liberals want to say. All it is the man doing what he does when he's free to anyway. And he could protect the students and have that on him. That would be a lot of extra added protection. And I'm going to tell you what, if school teachers were allowed to be armed, the ones that are vetted, ex-military, carry concealed permit holders, maybe even if the school wanted them to take special training, whatever, you would see that these school shootings would stop. They're already rare anyway, but one, you know, even though they're rare, one is too many. So I think that's a good idea of what should be done. I've also thought of another idea, which was that once the teachers start class, they close the door. The door is locked from the hallway, but fully accessible to any student in the room to get out of the room. So you're not locking the kids in the rooms. But from the hallway, once class starts, the door is locked. That would be just a precaution. You can get through doors, but I think that would be a good precaution to have in a school too. So the kids aren't going to feel like they're locked down because there shouldn't be any of them in the hallway once class starts anyway. And they can get out of the room at will. There's no lock on the inside. It's only locked from the hallway coming in. That would help a lot, I believe, as well. Because here's my thoughts, guys. Neutering guns, like saying, oh, you know, well, let's take an AR-15 and we're still going to let you have the AR-15, which they want to take that, believe me. But let's say, well, we're going to let you have the AR-15, but we don't want magazines over 10 rounds. We don't want it to have pistol grips. We don't want it to have a bayonet lug or a flash hider. Just absolute ignorance. Let me tell you something I looked into. There's 11 teenagers a day that die because of texting while in a vehicle. Texting or on the phone. I mean, like talking on the phone. Okay, 11 a day. Think of that over the month. Nobody's calling for any kind of restrictions on that. Maybe they should make cell phone use and driving age 21 minimum, right? That would save some children. But neutering guns, or, you know, this crazy talk that the anti-gunners talk about, would be like me saying, well, or Congress saying, there's 11 deaths a day with teenagers texting or talking on their cell phone while driving. I'm going to limit your cell phone battery. I'm going to take a battery that lasts 4 hours, and I'm only going to make it last an hour and a half. No one needs more than an hour and a half on your phone, right? You'll be at an electrical socket later that day. Why would you need more than an hour and a half talk time on your phone? I'm also going to limit the screen brightness on your phone, because we're going to curb these deaths on the highway from kids texting and, you know, driving a vehicle. That's about the kind of ignorance that it sounds like to me. And here's one of the main things, guys. This has always been the problem from the beginning. The people that are anti-gun and push anti-gun laws and write anti-gun bills have no idea what they're talking about, have no experience with a firearm, have never used one. Most of them haven't held one. They have no idea what they're talking about. And they're trying to write laws to curb things. Remember the shoulder thing that goes up when they asked that lady that wanted to ban the heat shields that wrote out a bill? They let her put this bill in, and she said that that a heat shield was a shoulder thing that goes up. You kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, come on. These people have no clue. Like a flash hider. I guess they think that word sounds scary. A flash hider on a gun makes it no more or less deadly or lethal than the man on the moon. And flash hiders were banned at one time. Bayonet lugs. I've never heard of anybody having a bayonet on the end of a rifle and killing someone with it, killing a civilian with it. Yet bayonet lugs were banned because people were writing these laws that had no idea what they were talking about. That's just the type of thing we're living in. I think that everybody that's going to write a bill or any kind of anti-gun legislation, or even wants to speak, any congressman that wants to speak about anti-gun laws or anything to do with guns, should have to go through training and fire an AR-15 semi-automatic like civilians get, and get familiar with the platform, know how to use the gun, know how to break it down, know how to field strip it, put it back together and clean it, and have time on it at the range before they can even get up and speak about it. What do you guys think of that? Is that common sense? I mean, I can't go tell you what I think about jets, how much fuel they should carry, engine components. I have no idea about a jet. But yet we have these people that know less about a gun than I know about a jet, and they're out there trying to write bills and put them through Congress. And because it all falls back to one simple thing. It's only to curb our gun rights. There is no other reason. There's no other rhyme or reason to it. It's not to save a child. The Democrats always swing wildly from one thing to the other. Well, let's ban guns for the children. Abortion is a woman's right. Abort all you want. They always swing wildly like that. That's what they're known for. So, they want to save children on one hand, and they want to fund Planned Parenthood to abort all the babies they can on the other. So it makes no sense to me. But I tell you like it is, guys. A lot in our government don't want civilians to have guns anymore. They just don't. It's just a plain and simple fact. And I kind of predict this, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the next Democrat that gets in office, I think there's going to be a big change in this country. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm going to be right, but we could be coming upon a big change in this country in gun laws. And somebody said, well, what would they do? How would they get them all? Well, they wouldn't come get them all. This is exactly what they would do. They would say that there is a ban on the purchase and transfer of all, quote, assault rifles, semi-automatic rifles that have certain features and certain looks to them, detachable box magazines. What they would do is they would make you register what you had, and they would tell you that in order for you to transfer it, it would have to go through a process of being registered into another person's name with extra added paperwork other than the Form 4473. And they would also, when it comes to the magazines, they would just straight out say that you're going to be a felon if you're in possession of anything that holds more than 10 rounds. They won't play games with that. I'm saying if it ever comes to this, which I hope it doesn't. But they wouldn't play any games with that. They would just straight up say you're going to be a Class 3 felon if you're in possession of anything that holds more than 10 rounds for that rifle. And if you have that rifle that is not registered to your name, you're going to be a felon overnight. And that's what they would do. Now, there's still, I can't remember the exact number, so I don't want to throw it out there, but I'm wanting to say it's 30 million AR-15s. That's not including what's in the stores right now all across the country. That's just what's in civilian homes, 30 million of them that didn't harm a person today. But there's 30 million of these AR-15s, and if there was ever a panic or a scare and everybody went out and bought from the stores, how many million that would go up. So to try to just say that they're gonna be able to get them all, is just a joke. This David Hogg kid, he's just a liberal nut job. That's all he is. He just wants to see our gun rights taken away. This is the first time I've ever seen groups of people protesting for their rights to be taken away out in the street. Please take my rights. Take my rights. I don't need them anymore. Take my rights. I'll tell you. If the Second Amendment doesn't apply to AR-15s, 30-round magazines, AK variants, then the First Amendment doesn't apply to Facebook, media, or social media and internet. That's all I got to say. Let's curb that too. You shouldn't be able to say whatever you want on Twitter because so many people can see what you just said at one time. And back when they made the Constitution, they didn't have Twitter where you could tell all these thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people at one time. So we're going to have to restrain certain speech on Twitter and Facebook because the founders of the Constitution and the writers, they didn't know it would be like this. So David Hogg doesn't even have a right to speak and to say and to get up there and speak to people because of TV cameras filming it. It goes out to hundreds of thousands of people all at one time. Well, the framers of the Constitution, they didn't know it was going to be like that. So we're going to just curb his rights, David Hogg. We're not going to let him speak and say what he wants to say. That's exactly what it means to me. If you're trying to tell me that I can't have an AR-15, I can't have 30-round magazines, because back in the time of muskets, there was way more of a threat than there is now, because the general population was evenly armed with the military and government, evenly. We're not evenly armed now. We can't go get certain things. We would have to be able to have Stinger missiles and all this high-tech weaponry to be evenly armed with the military and government, and that's what they were back in the days of the muskets. It was even. They were all on an even playing field. So don't tell me when you say, oh, it was written in the time of muskets, don't tell me that it was less of a threat than it is now. Because in the time of muskets, everybody was even. There was no giant among those men. Now with the nuclear warheads and the bombs and the missiles and the Moabs and all this stuff, we're not anywhere near what the military has. But back then in the days of the muskets they were, in the days of the cannons they were. So, well, that's it for now, guys. My rambling on. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Defender of Freedom, out.